A commander so brilliant he defeated 8 Roman legions using a single tactical maneuver that military academies still study today. Hannibal Barca's story unfolds from his education in Spain through the Saguntum crisis that sparked war with Rome, his perilous mountain crossing, and the ambush at Lake Trasimene that demonstrated Rome's fatal underestimation. We analyze the aftermath of Cannae, years of maneuvering against Roman resilience, Scipio Africanus' emergence, and how Hannibal's last army fell when elephant charges were neutralized at Zama. Carthage emerged as the dominant power in the Western Mediterranean through a combination of naval prowess and vast commercial networks. Founded by Phoenician colonists from Tyre around the late 9th century BC. The city occupied a strategic location on the North African coast in what is now Tunisia. Its excellent harbors and central position allowed it to control vital sea lanes. Carthaginian merchants established trading posts across the Mediterranean. From Sicily and Sardinia to the coasts of Spain and North Africa, these outposts facilitated a lucrative exchange of goods, including precious metals, textiles, and agricultural products. This extensive trade generated immense wealth, solidifying Carthage's economic dominance for centuries. The city's government was a complex oligarchic republic. Power was shared among several bodies, including a council of elders and 2 annually elected chief magistrates known as suffets. A powerful senate of wealthy citizens directed most state affairs, including foreign policy and finances. Research has shown this system provided political stability, allowing for consistent long-term strategic planning. While not a democracy in the Athenian model, the Carthaginian state effectively managed its vast commercial empire and diverse population. Militarily, Carthage relied primarily on its formidable navy to protect its trade routes and project power. The city maintained one of the largest fleets in the Mediterranean, crewed by experienced sailors. Its armies, however, were predominantly composed of mercenaries and levies from allied territories. These forces included skilled Balearic slingers, Numidian cavalry, and Libyan infantry. Before its major conflicts with Rome, Carthage had already secured control over key territories, proving its capability to wage large-scale wars. This military and economic foundation set the stage for the inevitable clash with the expanding Roman Republic. But how would this formidable military machine fare when it first encountered the rising power of Rome? The First Punic War erupted in 264 BC, a direct confrontation over Sicily. This island became the primary battleground, a prize neither power was willing to relinquish. Initial Roman forays were clumsy, as their land-based legions struggled against Carthaginian naval dominance. The strategic imperative was clear. Rome had to challenge its rival on the water or face permanent exclusion from the central Mediterranean. In an astonishing display of resolve, Rome launched an unprecedented naval building program. Historical accounts describe how they reverse-engineered a captured Carthaginian quinquereme, constructing a fleet of 100 vessels in just 60 days. This crash course in naval warfare paid shocking dividends at the Battle of Mylae in 260 BC. There, the Romans deployed the corvus, a novel boarding bridge that turned sea battles into infantry melees. This ingenious device neutralized Carthaginian sailing skill, allowing Roman legionaries to storm enemy decks. A series of subsequent naval clashes cemented this new reality. Though storms claimed as many Roman ships as enemy action, the war's later stages saw the rise of Hannibal Barca, a brilliant Carthaginian commander. From his strongholds on Mount Eryx, he waged a relentless guerrilla campaign, proving a formidable opponent for Roman forces. Despite his tactical genius on land, the conflict was ultimately decided at sea. The final crushing Roman victory came at the Aegates Islands in 241 BC. Their rebuilt fleet intercepted and destroyed a Carthaginian supply convoy, severing Hamilcar's forces from essential support. This defeat forced Carthage to sue for peace. The subsequent treaty cost them Sicily and a massive indemnity of 3,200 talents of silver. This financial burden crippled the Carthaginian treasury, a wound that would fester and directly lead to future conflicts. The First Punic War established Rome as a major naval power and left Carthage humiliated, impoverished, and thirsting for revenge under leaders like the undefeated Hamilcar. This thirst for revenge would be inherited by Hamilcar's son, a boy who would come to embody his father's vendetta against Rome. The North African plain stretched before the 2 greatest generals of their age. In October of 202 BC, near Zama, Hannibal Barca and Scipio Africanus prepared their armies for a final confrontation that would decide the fate of the Mediterranean world. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense that this clash would be unlike any other in the long war. Both commanders understood the immense stakes, knowing their previous strategies would face the ultimate test on this field. Hannibal's force was built around a formidable corps of 80 war elephants, a weapon he hoped would shatter the Roman lines as he had done at Cannae. However, modern analysis reveals his veteran infantry was outnumbered and less experienced than the legions he had defeated in Italy. His cavalry, drawn from his Numidian allies, was significantly outmatched by Scipio's own Numidian horsemen and Roman equites. This reversal of his traditional advantages presented a unique challenge. The general who had once relied on superior cavalry now faced an opponent who had mastered that very arm. Scipio, in contrast, commanded a highly disciplined and confident army. His superior cavalry forces gave him a tactical edge his predecessors had lacked, yet his challenge was equally profound. He had to find a way to neutralize the terrifying charge of 80 war elephants, a threat no Roman commander had successfully overcome on such a scale. Research indicates Scipio devised innovative tactical formations, creating lanes in his maniples to channel the beasts harmlessly through his lines. He could not simply replicate Hannibal's classic double envelopment. He had to invent a new way to win. The stage was set for a brutal contest of adaptation, where past glory meant little and immediate execution meant everything. This innovative approach would soon face its ultimate test as Hannibal initiated his signature battlefield maneuver. The ground trembled as Hannibal unleashed his most fearsome asset. Dozens of war elephants, their tusks fitted with deadly iron points, began their thunderous charge toward the Roman lines. This was the moment the Carthaginian general had long anticipated, a replay of his greatest triumphs designed to shatter legionary morale. Yet Scipio Africanus was prepared with a revolutionary countermeasure, a plan born from studying Hannibal's own past victories and the animal's inherent weaknesses. Instead of a solid front, Scipio ordered his maniples to form wide, vertical corridors through the entire depth of his formation. As the colossal beasts advanced, a deafening barrage erupted from the Roman lines. Hundreds of trumpeters and horn players blasted their instruments simultaneously, creating a wall of sound that disoriented the sensitive elephants. Confused and panicked by the noise, many animals instinctively veered away from the solid infantry blocks and into the inviting, empty lanes. Roman velites, light infantry skirmishers, harassed them from the sides, guiding the terrified elephants harmlessly through the corridors and out the rear of the army, where they were no longer a threat. Simultaneously, as the elephant charge was being neutralized, the cavalry wings of both armies engaged in a fierce struggle. Scipio had strengthened his own cavalry, and his allied Numidian horsemen proved exceptionally effective. They successfully pushed back their Carthaginian counterparts, driving them from the field. This action, occurring at the same critical moment, stripped Hannibal of his protective screen and exposed the flanks of his main infantry body. The brilliant lane strategy had not only negated the elephant charge, but had also set the stage for the decisive maneuver of the battle. The Roman cavalry, now victorious, was poised to deliver the final, crushing blow from the rear. Yet this seemingly decisive advantage would face its ultimate challenge against the most formidable infantry in the ancient world. The final infantry engagement at Zama in 202 BC represented the ultimate test of military professionalism. Hannibal's third line, his hardened Italian veterans, stood immovable. These were the men who had triumphed at Cannae and Trasimene. They faced Scipio's equally determined legions, who advanced with disciplined cohesion. The resulting clash was not a wild melee but a brutal, pushing match of shields and swords. For a time the battle hung in a precarious balance, with neither side yielding an inch. The veterans fought with the grim determination of soldiers who had survived a dozen campaigns. This deadlock was shattered by the returning Roman cavalry. Research into the battle's tactical flow reveals a critical vulnerability. The Carthaginian line was engaged frontally with the Roman infantry, its flanks completely exposed. When the cavalry under Gaius Laelius and Massinissa charged into the Carthaginian rear, it created an impossible tactical situation. Analysis shows the line did not break from a loss of morale, but from physical compression and a collapse of its formation. The veterans were attacked from behind while still pressed from the front. They could not redeploy to meet the new threat, and their compact ranks became a death trap. The disciplined Roman maniples maintained pressure, systematically dismantling the surrounded force. Amidst the ensuing chaos, a remarkable moment of personal recognition occurred. The ancient historian Polybius recorded that the two legendary commanders, Hannibal and Scipio, saw each other across the battlefield. This was not a prearranged meeting, but a fleeting intersection in the storm of combat. Hannibal, witnessing the collapse of his finest troops, attempted a final, desperate act. He rallied what men he could and led a direct charge towards Scipio himself, aiming to decapitate the Roman command. Scipio's personal guard swiftly intercepted this assault. The two greatest generals of their age were close enough to lock eyes, a silent acknowledgement of their 16-year war culminating in this decisive hour. The moment passed as quickly as it arrived, swallowed by the finality of the Carthaginian defeat. As the dust settled on the battlefield, the focus shifted from the clash of armies to the negotiating table, where the terms of surrender would reshape the ancient world. The peace settlement imposed upon Carthage in the year 201 BC was designed to permanently cripple the former maritime power. Rome demanded an immense war indemnity of 10,000 talents, to be paid over 50 years. The Carthaginian navy, once the terror of the Mediterranean, was forcibly reduced to a mere 10 triremes. Most significantly, Carthage lost its sovereign right to wage war outside of Africa, requiring Roman consent for any military action. This effectively transformed the city into a Roman client state, stripping it of its independent foreign policy for the foreseeable future. In the war's aftermath, Hannibal Barca transitioned from military command to political leadership. He was elected Suffete, a chief magistrate, in the year 196 BC. His political career was dedicated to revitalizing Carthage's shattered economy and challenging the corrupt oligarchy he held responsible for the state's weakness. Research has shown his reforms were both audacious and systematic. He launched a thorough investigation into public finances, uncovering widespread embezzlement among the ruling elite. Hannibal's economic reforms were groundbreaking. He initiated a restructuring of the public debt to stabilize the treasury. His most notable achievement was making the state's finances so robust that, by the year 191 BC, Carthage could offer to pay its entire war indemnity to Rome in a single lump sum. This was a powerful declaration of economic recovery. However, his anti-corruption campaign created powerful enemies. These oligarchs eventually reported his dealings to Rome, framing them as preparations for a new war. Forced into exile around the year 195 BC, Hannibal spent his remaining years as a fugitive, yet his post-war efforts demonstrated his enduring talent for organization and reform. From this broader view of his political legacy, we now focus on the intimate details of his departure from Carthage. Following the peace terms, Hannibal chose voluntary exile in 195 BCE rather than face potential surrender to Rome. He first sailed to Tyre, the ancient Phoenician mother city of Carthage. This journey held deep symbolic meaning, a return to his people's ancestral roots. After a brief stay, he traveled to Crete seeking a temporary refuge. Historical accounts suggest his time on the island was marked by caution, as he took elaborate measures to secure his wealth from local greed. His final destination was the court of Antiochus III, the powerful Seleucid king in Syria. Hannibal arrived there around 196 BCE and was received as a respected military mind. He soon became a trusted advisor, urging the king to adopt a more aggressive stance against Roman expansion. Hannibal's strategic counsel included opening a second front in Italy itself, a plan reflecting his own legendary campaign. However, research indicates his advice was often met with skepticism or was only partially implemented by the king. When the Roman-Syrian War erupted in 192 BC, Hannibal played a significant advisory role. He commanded a fleet for Antiochus, but his efforts were hampered by a lack of adequate resources and experienced crews. A major naval defeat at Eurymedon in 190 BCE effectively ended his active military involvement in the conflict. While some historians believe his influence at court had already waned, others argue he remained a key strategic thinker until the war's conclusion. His final years defined by his enduring status as Rome's most formidable and persistent adversary. Though his direct military command had ended, Hannibal's strategic mind would soon find new theaters for its application across the Hellenistic world. After his defeat at Zama, Hannibal Barca's political career in Carthage ended. He began a long period of exile, serving as a military advisor to various Hellenistic kingdoms. His profound knowledge of warfare made him a valuable, though controversial asset. He first found refuge at the Seleucid court of Antiochus III. When Antiochus was defeated by Rome, Hannibal's position became untenable. He was forced to flee once more, becoming a perpetual wanderer pursued by relentless Roman agents who demanded his extradition. His travels next brought him to the kingdom of Armenia around 183 BC. There, he aided King Artaxias in founding the new capital, Artaxata. Historical accounts suggest Hannibal provided crucial urban planning and fortification advice. He likely applied his military engineering expertise to the city's defenses, ensuring its strategic strength. This period demonstrated his adaptability, shifting from battlefield command to advisory roles in city development and statecraft, all while evading his Roman pursuers. Hannibal's final chapter unfolded in Bithynia, on the Black Sea coast under King Prusius I. He served as a naval and military advisor, and some sources claim he achieved a final victory against Bithynia's enemy, Pergamon at sea. However, Roman pressure on the king intensified. Around 183 BC, with his location betrayed and the house where he lived surrounded by the king's soldiers, Hannibal chose to end his own life. He took poison, famously stating he would relieve the Romans of their long-standing fear. His death marked the end of an era, closing the life of Rome's most formidable adversary, who spent his final years refining his strategic mind across the eastern Mediterranean. While his dramatic death concluded a legendary rivalry, the precise circumstances of his final moments reveal an even more intimate story of defiance. Hannibal Barca's final days unfolded in the small Bithynian town of Libessa around the year 183 BC. Pursued relentlessly by Roman agents, he found refuge under the protection of King Prusius, but this sanctuary proved temporary. When the Roman fleet arrived to besiege the location, Hannibal's residence was completely surrounded, leaving him with no viable path for escape. Facing imminent capture and the humiliating prospect of being paraded through Rome in a triumph, he made a definitive choice. He would end his own life on his own terms. Historical accounts, including those from the Roman historian Livy, describe how Hannibal used a poison he carried concealed within a ring. This was a common practice among prominent figures of the era to maintain control over their fate. As he prepared to take the poison, he reportedly spoke his famous last words. He declared, "Let us now relieve the Romans from their anxiety, since they think it too long to wait for the death of an old man." This statement was a powerful final commentary on the deep-seated fear he continued to instill in the Roman Republic, even in his final years and exile. The circumstances of his death remain a subject of analysis. Some scholars argue his suicide was a calculated act to deny his enemies a symbolic victory. Others believe it was the final, logical step for a man who had lived his entire life in conflict with Rome. His death in Libessa marked the quiet, self-determined end of one of history's most formidable military commanders, closing a chapter that had terrified Rome for decades. But how did this commander, who chose his own quiet end, come to cast such a long shadow over the very art of war? Hannibal Barca's military legacy profoundly shaped warfare for over 2 millennia. His operational art during the Second Punic War, particularly the audacious crossing of the Alps in 218 BC, became a timeless case study. Commanders across eras studied his campaigns not as historical curiosities, but as practical textbooks on strategy. His core principle of outmaneuvering a stronger opponent through psychological and physical mobility entered permanent military doctrine. This approach demonstrated that victory could be achieved by shattering an enemy's will and alliances rather than through simple brute force. Historical analysis reveals that Napoleon Bonaparte meticulously examined Hannibal's envelopment tactics. He adapted the double envelopment principle used at Cannae for his own decisive victories. Centuries later, during the Second World War, American General George Patton also expressed deep admiration for the Carthaginian general. Patton's rapid, unpredictable armored thrusts through France echoed Hannibal's emphasis on speed and surprise. These examples confirm a continuous thread of strategic influence, connecting ancient battlefields to modern theaters of war. Specific tactical innovations credited to Hannibal remain relevant. The tactical envelopment perfected at the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC is still taught in military academies worldwide. Furthermore, his masterful use of intelligence and deception established precedents for information warfare. He consistently turned the environment into a weapon, from the Alpine crossing to the terrain at Lake Trasimene. As one historian wrote, Hannibal's campaigns provided the complete curriculum for the operational artist. His methods demonstrated that a smaller, agile force could dominate a larger, rigid one, a lesson that resonates with military theorists to this day. While his military methods remain universally studied, the perception of Hannibal himself has undergone remarkable transformations throughout history. Historical interpretations of Hannibal Barca reveal dramatic shifts across centuries. Ancient Roman writers like Livy depicted him as a monstrous figure driven by cruelty. They emphasized his brutal Alpine crossing and the carnage at Cannae. Modern scholarship, however, often portrays him as a tragic hero. This figure was bound by an oath and ultimately failed despite his genius. The contrast between these views highlights how historical perspective is shaped by the victors. Archaeological evidence sometimes challenges these literary traditions. Excavations in Spain and Italy have uncovered coins and artifacts. These finds suggest his logistical planning was even more sophisticated than texts indicate. For instance, the discovery of elephant remains in the Alps, while debated, provides tangible proof of his daring march. This physical evidence offers a counterpoint to the purely narrative accounts written by his enemies. Recent scholarship has actively questioned long-held assumptions about his strategic decisions. Some historians now argue his failure to march on Rome after Cannae was not a fatal error. They suggest political constraints from Carthage limited his options. Analysis of economic records indicates he may have lacked the siege equipment and local support for such an assault. As one researcher noted, the traditional narrative overlooks the complex political web in which he was entangled. This reevaluation continues to transform our understanding of one of history's most formidable commanders. But what if the political constraints were only part of the story, and the true man behind the legend has been waiting in plain sight all along? Separating the historical Hannibal Barca from his legendary persona requires careful examination of contemporary accounts. While later Roman histories often painted him as a monstrous genius, the Greek historian Polybius, writing just decades after Hannibal's death, provides a more measured portrait. Polybius, who had access to Roman and Carthaginian sources, depicted Hannibal not as a daemon but as a supremely capable and resilient leader. His character, as revealed through these early texts, combined immense personal endurance with a sharp, pragmatic intellect. He shared the physical hardships of his soldiers, a fact noted to build unwavering loyalty across his multi-ethnic army. His leadership style was fundamentally adaptive. Facing Rome's vast resources, Hannibal relied on psychological warfare and strategic maneuver over direct, large-scale confrontations when possible. Contemporary analysis of his decisions, such as the perilous Alpine crossing with war elephants, reveals a commander willing to embrace immense risk for strategic surprise. Research into his supply lines and diplomacy shows he skillfully managed alliances with rest of Italian tribes, aiming to dismantle Rome's confederation. However, some sources suggest his famed control had limits. After the Battle of Cannae, his brother Mago reportedly presented the Roman rings to the Carthaginian Senate as proof of victory. A dramatic gesture some historians interpret as necessary to secure continued support from a hesitant government. Ultimately, Hannibal's impact transcended his military campaigns. His 15-year occupation of Italy fundamentally traumatized the Roman psyche, proving their republic was vulnerable. The constant threat he posed forced Rome to militarize its society and economy to an unprecedented degree. This prolonged struggle eroded traditional political norms and empowered ambitious generals, a trend that would eventually culminate in the civil wars of the 1st century BC. In this way, the man who nearly broke Rome inadvertently forged the very tools professional army and a culture of military command that would later build its empire. His legacy was not just the battles he won, but the profound institutional changes he provoked in his formidable opponent. Hannibal Barca was born around 247 years before the Common Era into a Carthaginian world defined by bitter defeat. His father, Hannibal Barca, was a brilliant military commander who had fought Rome to a standstill in the First Punic War. Yet Carthage was forced into a humiliating peace, losing Sicily and facing crippling financial reparations. The city's merchant aristocracy sought to rebuild its commercial empire, but Hamilcar envisioned a different path to power and revenge. He secured a command in the resource-rich lands of Iberia, seeing it as a new base from which to restore Carthaginian fortunes. The young Hannibal's childhood was steeped in this atmosphere of simmering resentment. Ancient sources, notably the historian Polybius, recount a pivotal moment before the family departed for Spain. Hamilcar took his 9-year-old son to a temple and made him swear an oath upon the sacrificial altar. The boy pledged eternal hostility toward Rome, a vow that would become the driving force of his entire life. This event, whether entirely literal or partly legendary, powerfully symbolizes the transfer of a father's vendetta to his son. Hannibal's education was that of a soldier and statesman, groomed under his father's exacting supervision for the conflict he knew was inevitable. In Iberia, Hamilcar Barca embarked on a decade-long campaign of conquest and consolidation starting around 237. He subjugated local tribes and exploited the region's vast silver mines, which provided the wealth Carthage desperately needed. Hamilcar's death in battle in 228 did not halt the expansion. His son-in-law, Hasdrubal the Fair, continued the work, founding the city of New Carthage as a capital. Through this Iberian enterprise, Hamilcar created both a powerful army and a personal dynasty, bequeathing to his son the tools, the territory, and the transcendent purpose to challenge Rome. While this territorial inheritance provided the stage, the man who would wield these tools required equally meticulous preparation. Hannibal Barca received a comprehensive education designed to forge a supreme commander. He mastered several languages, including Greek and Latin, which proved invaluable for diplomacy and military intelligence. His studies encompassed geography and the history of foreign cultures, providing a broad strategic worldview. This intellectual foundation was paired with relentless physical and military training from a very young age. His primary instructor was his father Hamilcar, who instilled in him a profound understanding of land warfare and an unwavering animosity toward Rome. Historical accounts suggest Hannibal swore an oath of eternal enmity against Rome as a boy. After Hamilcar's death around the year 228 BC, Hannibal continued his apprenticeship under his brother-in-law Hasdrubal the Fair in the Carthaginian territories in Spain. Hasdrubal further honed the young officer's skills in administration, diplomacy, and large-scale army logistics, preparing him for high command. Hannibal's early military experience was gained through constant campaigning in Spain. He commanded cavalry and infantry units, learning the strengths and weaknesses of his multi-ethnic army firsthand. His leadership qualities and tactical brilliance became evident quickly. One ancient source notes he possessed a boundless energy of body and a still greater energy of mind, which captivated his soldiers. This rapid ascent saw him appointed as the commander of the Carthaginian army in Spain by the time he was approximately 26 years old, a position he earned through demonstrated merit and the loyalty of the troops. This remarkable ascent through merit would soon face its ultimate test when political turmoil struck the Iberian Peninsula. The sudden assassination of Hasdrubal the Fair in 221 BC created a power vacuum in Spain. The Carthaginian army, demonstrating its loyalty to the Barcid family, immediately proclaimed the young Hannibal, then just 26 years old, as the new commander-in-chief. The Carthaginian government in North Africa, perhaps reluctantly, confirmed his appointment. Hannibal moved swiftly to consolidate his authority over Carthaginian territories in Iberia. His first objective was to secure the rich silver mines that funded his military ambitions, ensuring a continuous flow of wealth for his future campaigns. He then launched a series of punishing military operations against the Alcaides and Vacae tribes over the next 2 years, extending Carthaginian control deep into the Meseta Central. These campaigns were not merely for plunder, they served to harden his veteran army and test new recruits under combat conditions. During this period of consolidation, Hannibal married Emilce, a princess from the powerful Iberian city of Castello. This union was a masterstroke of political strategy, solidifying a crucial alliance with a key local power and binding an important Iberian community directly to his cause. It sent a clear message that his power base was both Carthaginian and Iberian. Every action he took was a calculated step towards a larger goal. While publicly securing Spain, Hannibal was privately preparing for a war he believed was inevitable. He spent the winter of 220 BC at his capital, New Carthage, meticulously planning his next move. He gathered intelligence on Roman dispositions, stockpiled supplies, and trained his multi-ethnic force for the monumental conflict to come. His focus was already fixed beyond the Iberian Peninsula towards the Alps and the heart of the Roman Republic itself. Yet one calculated act of provocation would soon force his meticulously laid plans into motion. The siege of Saguntum in the year 219 BCE was the spark that ignited the Second Punic War. This wealthy Iberian city held a crucial alliance with Rome, a pact Hannibal Barca deliberately challenged. His strategic calculations were profound. By attacking a Roman ally, he provoked a conflict on his own terms, far from Carthaginian and Roman heartlands. Modern analysis reveals he sought to secure his rear and acquire resources for his ambitious Italian campaign. The siege itself lasted 8 grueling months, demonstrating the city's fierce resistance and Hannibal's relentless determination. Rome's diplomatic response was initially measured but firm. The Senate dispatched envoys to Carthage demanding Hannibal's surrender, a move historians interpret as an ultimatum they knew would be rejected. When the Carthaginian government refused, Roman diplomats famously declared, "We give you war or peace, choose which you will." This account, written by the historian Livy, captures the moment's finality. The Roman political stance hardened, viewing the sack of Saguntum as an unforgivable act of aggression that demanded a military response. Within Carthage, the political situation was deeply divided. The powerful Barcid faction, led by Hannibal and his family, held significant influence and pushed for war, confident in their Iberian resources and their general's genius. Conversely, other factions feared the immense risk of confronting Rome again. Research indicates the Carthaginian Senate ultimately backed Hannibal, a decision sealing the city's fate. The fall of Saguntum was not merely a military victory, it was a calculated political gambit that forced both empires onto a path to a devastating 16-year war, a conflict that would reshape the ancient world. This deliberate escalation would soon expose Rome's strategic blind spots, as Hannibal's unconventional approach defied all their established military doctrines. Rome entered the conflict with Carthage anticipating a traditional war of attrition. Their strategic thinking, honed against regional Italian powers, envisioned set-piece battles and predictable supply lines. The Senate, confident in its legion's discipline and numerical advantage, planned to fight the war primarily on two fronts. One consular army was dispatched to Sicily, poised for an invasion of North Africa, while a second force under Consul Publius Cornelius Scipio moved to intercept Hannibal in Gaul. This conventional deployment revealed a fundamental failure to grasp the Carthaginian commander's audacious intent. Political divisions in Rome further complicated a unified response. The historian Polybius noted a factional split, with some senators advocating for immediate, overwhelming force while others urged caution. This internal debate created strategic hesitation at a critical moment. As the Greek historian later wrote, the Romans did not believe that Hannibal would dare to lead an army through the Alps. They dismissed the mountain crossing as a logistical impossibility, a catastrophic miscalculation of their enemy's resolve and ingenuity. Consequently, Rome was psychologically and militarily unprepared for Hannibal's invasion of Italy itself. His sudden appearance in the Po Valley in the autumn of 218 BC shattered all Roman expectations. The historian Livy captured the contemporary shock, recording that the news caused unparalleled panic and confusion in the city. The conventional war Rome had prepared for vanished, replaced by a desperate fight for survival on its own soil, a direct result of its profound underestimation of a tactical genius. This catastrophic miscalculation would soon be answered by the very campaign they had deemed impossible, forcing Rome to confront the consequences of its flawed assumptions. In the spring of 218 BC, Hannibal Barca launched one of history's most audacious military campaigns. He departed from the formidable port city of New Carthage, modern-day Cartagena, with a colossal force. Modern analysis suggests his army numbered approximately 90,000 men, a truly multinational coalition drawn from across the Carthaginian sphere. Alongside his corps of seasoned Libyan and Phoenician troops marched fierce Iberian mercenaries, skilled Balearic slingers, and formidable Numidian cavalry. The most startling component of his force, however, was the 37 war elephants, living siege engines intended to shatter Roman morale. The initial phase of the march was a logistical masterpiece. Hannibal first directed his army northwest, toward the formidable barrier of the Pyrenees Mountains. This was not a simple border crossing but a calculated move to consolidate control. He left a significant contingent estimated at over 10,000 men to secure his newly conquered Iberian territories against potential revolts. This strategic decision ensured his long supply lines back to Carthage remained protected. The remaining force, still immense, began its arduous ascent through the mountain passes, a sight that must have stunned the local tribes. Once through the Pyrenees, the army pushed into the volatile lands of southern Gaul. This region was a patchwork of independent Celtic tribes, some hostile, others open to negotiation. Hannibal's advance was a delicate dance of diplomacy and force. He skillfully negotiated safe passage with certain Gallic chieftains, while his scouts probed ahead, wary of the Roman forces known to be operating near the coast. The sheer scale and diversity of his column, a moving city of soldiers and elephants, marked a point of no return. As one historian noted, this march was the spark that would ignite the Second Punic War, setting the stage for an even greater challenge that lay ahead: the towering, snow-capped Alps. Yet this monumental achievement would soon be overshadowed by the formidable natural barrier that now loomed directly before them. The ascent into the Alps presented Hannibal's army with a gauntlet of natural and human hostility. Treacherous, narrow paths carved into cliff faces forced a single-file march. Soldiers and pack animals faced a constant risk of plummeting down sheer drops. The late autumn weather exacerbated these dangers, with early snows obscuring the trails and making every step uncertain. Then the avalanches began. These cascades of snow, ice, and rock could erase entire sections of the column without warning, burying men and precious elephants alive. The cacophony of falling rock and the screams of animals and men filled the thin, cold air. Simultaneously, the Carthaginians faced relentless attacks from the Allobroges and other mountain tribes. These warriors used their superior knowledge of the terrain to launch ambushes from hidden ledges. They rolled boulders down onto the vulnerable column and attacked the rear guard, seeking plunder and sowing chaos. Hannibal's troops had to fight for every mile of their advance, their formations constantly broken by the terrain and the guerrilla tactics of their adversaries. Modern research has intensely debated the exact route of this monumental crossing. For many years, the most accepted theory pointed to the Col du Clapier Pass. However, recent analysis of geological and topographical data has shifted opinion. A growing number of historians and scientists now argue for the Col de la Traversette. This higher, more difficult pass aligns better with ancient descriptions of a steep final ascent and a commanding view of the Italian plain. Supporting this theory, a team led by microbiologist Bill Mahaney discovered a churned-up layer of sediment near the pass. This layer, dating to around 218 years before the Common Era, contained significant biological evidence. The analysis revealed an unusual concentration of horse manure and Clostridium bacteria, a microbial signature typically linked to the digestive tracts of horses. This finding provides tantalizing, though not conclusive, archaeological proof that a large number of animals once passed through that specific, high-altitude location. Yet this microbial trail of horses would soon give way to one of history's most astonishing military maneuvers. Hannibal's descent into the Po Valley in late 218 BC marked a pivotal moment in military history. With only 26,000 troops surviving the brutal Alpine crossing, his army was a shadow of its former strength. Yet, their sudden emergence on Italian soil sent a shockwave of terror through Rome. The Senate, which had believed the Alps were an impassable barrier, now faced a formidable enemy at its very gates. The psychological impact was immediate and profound, shattering the Roman sense of security. The Greek historian Polybius documented the army's dire condition, describing men who were emaciated and barely recognizable after their ordeal. Their clothes were in tatters, and many were suffering from severe frostbite. Despite this weakened state, Hannibal's arrival was a masterstroke of strategy. He had achieved the seemingly impossible, placing a battle-hardened army directly in the Roman heartland to open a second front. This maneuver threatened to dismantle Rome's network of alliances from within. Hannibal's first crucial task was securing local support. He made immediate contact with the Gallic tribes of the Po Valley, who were already hostile to Roman expansion. Polybius records that Hannibal skillfully won over many of their chieftains, presenting himself as a liberator. He provided them with captured Roman plunder and promised them freedom from Roman rule. This diplomatic success provided his exhausted army with fresh recruits, supplies, and a secure base of operations, transforming a desperate retreat into the beginning of a sustained campaign. With his diplomatic foothold secured and forces replenished, Hannibal now prepared to test his strategic vision against the full might of Rome in a carefully chosen confrontation. The Battle of Trebi in December of the year 218 BCE marked Hannibal Barca's first major victory on Italian soil. This engagement demonstrated his superior tactical mind against a predictable Roman military system. Hannibal deliberately provoked the Roman consul Tiberius Sempronius Longus into a hasty attack. He understood the Roman preference for direct, frontal assaults and used this knowledge to his advantage. The battlefield near the freezing Trebia River was chosen specifically to maximize the discomfort for the less acclimatized Roman troops. Hannibal's masterstroke was a complex ambush. He deployed his main infantry line, numbering approximately 20,000, to meet the Roman force of around 36,000 head-on. Meanwhile, he concealed a picked force of 1,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry under the command of his brother Mago, in the brush-covered terrain flanking the battlefield. As the main forces clashed, Hannibal's Numidian cavalry lured the Roman cavalry away and then feigned a retreat. This maneuver drew the entire Roman army across the cold river, exhausting and chilling the legionaries before the fight even began. The role of Carthaginian cavalry was decisive. Their superiority was not just in numbers but in quality and tactical use. They successfully drove off the Roman cavalry, exposing the flanks of the Roman infantry. At the critical moment, Mago's hidden force launched a devastating attack from concealment, striking the Roman rear. Trapped and surrounded, the Roman army was systematically destroyed. Modern analysis reveals this battle as a classic example of turning an enemy's strength into a weakness. Hannibal exploited Roman aggression and rigidity, while his own flexible command and use of terrain led to a catastrophic defeat for Rome, with estimates of Roman losses reaching as high as 20,000 men. But Hannibal was far from finished, and his next strategic maneuver would prove even more devastating to Roman ambitions. The dense morning mist rising from Lake Trasimene provided the perfect curtain for one of military history's most devastating ambushes. In June of 217 BC, Hannibal Barca executed a tactical masterpiece, concealing his entire army along the wooded hillsides flanking the narrow coastal road. He had meticulously studied the terrain, a natural bottleneck between the lake's shore and the high ground, and waited for the overconfident Roman consul, Gaius Flaminius, to march his forces directly into the trap. As the thick fog blanketed the landscape, visibility dropped to mere feet, creating a state of sensory deprivation for the advancing legions. The attack began without warning. Hannibal's forces descended from the fog-shrouded slopes, their war cries echoing disorientingly across the water. The Romans, stretched out in a long marching column, had no time to form proper battle lines. The combat was not a battle but a slaughter in chaos. Contemporary accounts describe the confusion as so absolute that many Roman soldiers died fighting each other, while others drowned in the lake under the weight of their armor. The consul Flaminius was killed early in the engagement, cut down by a Celtic cavalryman. His death shattered the Roman command structure, ensuring the army's complete disintegration within a few hours. News of the catastrophe reached Rome days later, plunging the city into unprecedented panic. An entire consular army comprising around 30,000 men had been annihilated. The psychological impact was profound. For the first time, a Carthaginian army stood deep in Italy, and the road to Rome itself seemed undefended. The disaster prompted the appointment of a dictator, Quintus Fabius Maximus, whose strategy of avoidance would later define this phase of the war. The ambush at Lake Trasimene was not merely a military defeat. It was a seismic event that shattered Roman invincibility and demonstrated Hannibal's genius for exploiting both environment and human psychology. Yet this psychological shock would soon compel Rome to make its most fateful military gamble. The summer of 216 BCE found Rome in a state of unprecedented military mobilization. Stung by Hannibal's crushing victories at Trebia and Lake Trasimene, the Republic raised a colossal force of 8 legions, a number nearly double its typical levy. This immense army, accompanied by an equal number of allied troops, represented the full, furious might of a state determined to annihilate the Carthaginian threat once and for all. The political atmosphere in Rome was one of intense pressure, demanding a decisive end to the invasion. This pressure fell squarely upon the 2 newly elected consuls, Gaius Terentius Varro and Lucius Aemilius Paulus. Historical accounts often highlight their clashing temperaments. Varro, a populist figure, advocated for immediate and aggressive engagement with Hannibal. Paulus, a more experienced and cautious commander, urged restraint, concerned by the Carthaginians' tactical genius. Despite their disagreements, they shared command of the vast legions, a system that would be tested under the extreme stress of battle. The Roman Senate and people expected nothing less than total victory. The 2 armies finally converged on the wide, flat plains near the Aufidus River in Apulia, close to the village of Cannae. This terrain was no accidental meeting place. Hannibal, having maneuvered through Italy, deliberately chose this open ground. Research suggests he understood it would negate the Roman advantage in infantry numbers by allowing his superior cavalry complete freedom of movement. The Romans, for their part, were confident their massive infantry formation, a veritable hammer of men, could simply overwhelm the enemy center on a field with no obstacles. Both sides believed the conditions favored their strategy, setting the stage for a confrontation that would become a timeless lesson in the art of war. The stage was set, the armies were in place, and the fate of the Western world hung in the balance on that Apulian plain. But what the Romans could not foresee was how their overwhelming confidence would be turned into their greatest vulnerability. Hannibal's double envelopment at Cannae stands as one of history's most devastating tactical triumphs. On August 2nd, 216 BC, he arranged his outnumbered infantry in a unique crescent formation. This convex line of Spanish and Gallic warriors deliberately stood forward, inviting the main Roman assault. The core of his plan was a controlled, fighting retreat. As the massive Roman legions pushed inward, Hannibal's center gave ground slowly and in good order. This movement transformed the initial crescent into a concave pocket, drawing the Romans deeper into a carefully prepared trap. Simultaneously, the battle's true architects were the elite Carthaginian cavalry on the wings. They achieved a swift and total victory over their Roman counterparts. Historical analysis reveals this was not merely a rout but a systematic dismantling of the Roman horse. Once the enemy cavalry was neutralized, these victorious squadrons did not pursue fleeing stragglers. Instead, they executed a precise maneuver, wheeling inward to strike the rear of the Roman infantry. The legions were now compressed from three sides, their numerical advantage rendered useless in the tightening vise. The final phase was annihilation. With the Roman flanks and rear sealed by Carthaginian infantry and cavalry, the battle became a slaughter. The legions, packed too tightly to wield their weapons effectively, could not break the enclosing ring. Modern studies estimate the Roman army lost between 50 and 70,000 men in a single day, a catastrophic figure. As the historian Polybius later wrote, few battles have more clearly demonstrated the complete destruction of an army. Hannibal's masterpiece was not just a victory, it was a near-total erasure of a consular force, achieved through flawless timing, disciplined troops, and superior maneuver. While the tactical brilliance of Hannibal's victory was now complete, the strategic implications of this unprecedented defeat were about to unfold across the entire Roman Republic. The aftermath of Cannae sent shockwaves through the ancient world, its consequences reshaping the political landscape of Italy. The scale of the loss was staggering. On that single day in August of 216 BC, approximately 70,000 Roman soldiers were killed, a figure that dwarfed the 6,000 Carthaginian casualties. The Roman army was effectively annihilated, creating a military vacuum that Hannibal's forces could theoretically exploit. The field itself became a symbol of unprecedented carnage, with later historians noting the piles of Roman dead. Politically, the defeat was a seismic event that shattered Rome's aura of invincibility. The news triggered panic within the city, and the reverberations were felt across the Italian peninsula. Many of Rome's allies, who had been bound by treaties, began to question their allegiance. Major southern cities including Capua, the second most important city in Italy, and Tarentum defected to the Carthaginian cause. This erosion of the Roman Confederation was a strategic victory for Hannibal, promising a broader base of support and isolating his primary adversary. Yet, Hannibal's most debated decision followed this historic victory. Despite the clear path to Rome and the city's vulnerable state, he chose not to march his army against its walls. This choice has been analyzed for centuries. Some military historians suggest a practical calculation. His army was exhausted, and he lacked the sophisticated siege equipment necessary for such a formidable task. Others propose a strategic vision focused on dismantling the Roman alliance system, believing the city would fall once completely isolated. His cavalry commander Hannibal reportedly lamented this inaction, with some accounts quoting him as having said, "You know how to win a victory, Hannibal, but you do not know how to use it." The failure to press the advantage ultimately granted Rome the precious time it needed to recover, regroup, and begin the long process of turning the tide in a conflict that would continue for another 14 years. Yet this very delay would set the stage for a new and more subtle form of warfare, one fought not just on battlefields but in the hearts and minds of men. Between 215 and 212 BC, Hannibal Barca conducted a complex military campaign across southern Italy. His primary objective was to dismantle the Roman Confederation by persuading its allies to defect. He achieved several significant diplomatic victories, convincing major cities like Capua to join his cause. This strategy aimed to isolate Rome and cripple its resource base. Despite these successes, a crucial goal remained frustratingly out of reach. Hannibal repeatedly failed to capture a major port city. Control of a significant harbor was essential for securing a reliable supply line from Carthage. Without it, his army could not be reinforced or resupplied effectively from the sea. This logistical weakness forced him to rely on local resources and limited overland roads. Consequently, his strategic options were gradually constrained by this persistent shortcoming. Facing Hannibal was the Roman dictator Quintus Fabius Maximus. Fabius implemented a strategy of avoidance and attrition, refusing to engage in a decisive pitched battle. His legions shadowed the Carthaginian army, harassing foraging parties and skirmishing in hilly terrain. This approach, later known as the Fabian strategy, aimed to wear down the invader without risking a catastrophic defeat. Modern analysis suggests this cautious warfare prevented Hannibal from delivering another knockout blow like the one at Cannae. Each year, Hannibal established winter quarters, often in allied cities like Capua. These periods were not merely for rest but for intense diplomatic activity. He worked to build and strengthen his anti-Roman coalition, sending emissaries and negotiating treaties. Some historians argue these efforts were his only path to ultimate victory. However, the core of the Roman alliance held firm, and by 212 BC, the strategic momentum began to shift as Rome recaptured key cities. Yet even as Rome regained its footing, a far greater shock was about to test the very core of its alliances. Hannibal's capture of Capua in 216 BC delivered a profound psychological blow to Rome. This city was the second most important in Italy, a thriving economic and cultural center. Its defection to the Carthaginian cause seemed to signal an irreversible shift in the war's momentum. However, this victory proved to be a strategic trap for Hannibal. He now had to protect a large, wealthy city, stretching his forces and limiting his famed mobility. The Romans, though reeling, refused to capitulate. The Senate, demonstrating remarkable resilience, initiated a total economic mobilization. They devalued the currency to fund new legions and implemented a form of emergency taxation, compelling the wealthy to loan money to the state. This financial tenacity allowed for the continuous raising of fresh armies, even after the catastrophic losses at Cannae. The Roman response culminated in the siege of Capua, beginning in 212 BC. Roman armies encircled the city, constructing massive fortifications to prevent any relief. Hannibal, unable to break the siege directly, attempted a classic diversionary maneuver. He marched his army rapidly toward Rome itself, hoping to force the besieging legions to abandon Capua and defend their capital. This daring move created immense tension, but it ultimately failed. The Romans had learned from their previous defeats. As the historian Livy recorded, the Senate declared the armies at Capua were sufficient for their task. They trusted their city's formidable walls and the newly raised reserves. Hannibal's demonstration outside Rome's gates was just that, a demonstration. He found the city prepared and unwilling to recall its troops. The failure of this gamble sealed Capua's fate. Without relief, the city surrendered in 211 BC. The Roman retribution was severe, stripping Capua of its political autonomy. This episode became a critical turning point. It showcased Rome's incredible capacity for endurance and centralized leadership, while highlighting Hannibal's strategic limitations. He could win spectacular battles, but he could not dismantle the Roman system. The war's center of gravity shifted irreversibly back toward Rome, demonstrating that its greatest strength was not merely its armies, but its unyielding political will. Yet even as Rome's political will proved unbreakable in Italy, a new generation of leadership was emerging to take the fight directly to the Carthaginian heartland. While Hannibal campaigned in Italy, a new Roman commander began to reverse Carthaginian fortunes in Spain. This leader was Publius Cornelius Scipio, a young man whose father and uncle had previously been killed fighting there. His arrival marked a pivotal shift in the war's secondary theater. Rome desperately needed a victory to cut off Hannibal's vital supplies and reinforcements. In 209 BC, Scipio executed a daring and unexpected maneuver. Instead of engaging Carthaginian field armies directly, he targeted their main supply base, the city of New Carthage. Modern analysis reveals his brilliant use of intelligence regarding local tidal patterns. He launched a surprise assault, with his troops wading through a shallow lagoon the defenders believed was impassable. The city fell in a single day, delivering a massive blow to Carthaginian logistics and morale. The capture of New Carthage was a strategic masterstroke with far-reaching consequences. The city held the Carthaginian war chest and, crucially, control over the rich Spanish silver mines. These mines funded Hannibal's entire campaign in Italy, paying for his mercenary armies and securing alliances. Furthermore, Spain provided a vast pool of manpower for his forces. By seizing this hub, Scipio not only enriched the Roman treasury, but also severely constricted the resources flowing to his famed adversary. This bold move established Scipio as a formidable general and set the stage for the eventual Roman reconquest of the peninsula. Scipio's success in Spain, however, would soon compel his rival to attempt a daring and desperate countermove. In 207 BCE, a desperate race unfolded across the Mediterranean. Hannibal Barca, Hannibal's brother, successfully evaded Roman forces in Spain and marched toward Italy with a fresh army and vital war elephants. His objective was clear: unite with Hannibal's veteran forces in the south and deliver a crushing, two-pronged blow to the Roman Republic. The fate of the entire war hinged on this strategic junction. The Roman consuls, Gaius Claudius Nero and Marcus Livius Salinator, moved to intercept him. They combined their legions, achieving a rare unity of command. The decisive confrontation occurred at the Metaurus River. Modern analysis of the terrain reveals Hasdrubal's army was caught in a disadvantageous position, its flanks exposed. The battle was ferocious and chaotic. Hasdrubal, realizing the day was lost and escape impossible, made a final, deliberate charge into the Roman lines. Dying in the combat, his army was annihilated. The Romans secured a devastating intelligence victory. They did not merely report the news, they dispatched a grim messenger southward. A cavalry detachment rode to Hannibal's camp in Bruttium and hurled a single object into its outposts. It was the severed head of his brother Hasdrubal. Contemporary sources describe the moment Hannibal received it. He reportedly stated, "I recognize the fate of Carthage," an utterance that some historians believe captures his instant comprehension of the strategic reality. In that horrific instant, he understood his brother was dead, the reinforcements were destroyed, and his own campaign in Italy was now strategically isolated. The hope of reinforcement vanished, leaving him to face the Roman might alone. While Hasdrubal confronted his grim isolation in Italy, the Roman high command was already plotting a far more ambitious move that would change the entire war. The year was 204 BC. The Roman Republic, wary after more than a decade of Hannibal's devastating Italian campaign, made a momentous strategic shift. The brilliant young general Publius Cornelius Scipio, later known as Scipio Africanus, decided to carry the war directly to the enemy's heartland. His plan was audacious. Instead of fighting Hannibal on Italian soil, he would threaten Carthage itself, forcing the conflict onto African shores. This move was a calculated gamble designed to break the stalemate and strike at the very foundation of Carthaginian power. Scipio's invasion force landed in North Africa, and his success was immediately bolstered by a crucial alliance. He secured the support of Massinissa, the powerful and cunning Numidian king. Massinissa provided something the Romans desperately needed, a superior cavalry force. This partnership proved decisive in the early engagements. Roman legions combined with nimble Numidian horsemen overwhelmed Carthaginian armies in the field. Key victories were secured, and the Roman war machine began to advance, spreading panic through the Carthaginian hinterlands and tightening the noose around the great city of Carthage. Faced with this existential threat on their doorstep, the Carthaginian Senate took a desperate measure. They sent an urgent recall to their most famous son, Hannibal Barca, who had been campaigning in Italy for 15 years. This summons marked a dramatic turning point in the long conflict. Historians note that the recall of Hannibal was an admission that Scipio's bold strategy was working perfectly. The war that had defined a generation was rushing toward its final, inevitable confrontation, pulling the legendary Hannibal away from the Italian peninsula to defend his homeland. Yet what awaited Hannibal upon his return would test the legendary commander in ways he could never have anticipated. Hannibal Barca returned to Africa in 203 BC after 16 years of campaigning in Italy. Carthage faced imminent invasion, and its leaders urgently recalled their most formidable commander. Upon arrival, Hannibal confronted a dire military situation. The city's regular forces were depleted, and its morale was low. He immediately began assembling a new army, a race against the advancing Roman legions. His recruitment strategy was twofold. Hannibal hired experienced mercenaries from various regions, including Numidian cavalry and Balearic slingers. Simultaneously, he initiated the training of Carthaginian citizens, many of whom had little prior combat experience. Historical analysis suggests he worked tirelessly to forge these disparate groups into a cohesive fighting force within a matter of months. The objective was to create a united army capable of confronting Rome's disciplined legions. Before the final battle, Hannibal and Scipio engaged in a famous face-to-face negotiation. Ancient sources, such as Polybius, recorded this encounter. The two generals met between the lines of their armies, though no agreement was reached. Hannibal reportedly proposed a peace treaty to avoid further bloodshed, but Scipio, confident in his position, demanded unconditional surrender. This failed diplomacy set the stage for the decisive confrontation at Zama, a clash that would determine the fate of the ancient world. With diplomacy having failed, the stage was now set for these two legendary commanders to resolve their conflict through force of arms. Our journey into the life of Hannibal Barca concludes. This narrative explored his early life as the son of Hamilcar Barca, his education, and military training that prepared him for command in Spain. We recounted the Saguntum crisis, Rome's underestimation, and Hannibal's daring march marked by mountain perils and his emergence in Italy. The text detailed pivotal battles like Trebia and Lake Trasimene. leading to the strategic situation before Cannae and its devastating double envelopment. We examined the aftermath, years of maneuvering, Capua's role, and the resilience of Rome alongside the emergence of Scipio Africanus. The story touched upon Hasdrubal's march, Scipio's invasion of Carthage, Hannibal's last army, and the final confrontation where the elephant charge was neutralized, leading to the defeat of his veterans. Finally, we considered the peace terms, consequences, Hannibal's flight from Carthage, his wandering between kingdoms, and his final moments with the poison ring before assessing his military genius, historical interpretations, and the man versus the legend. Subscribe to our channel to not miss new episodes. See you in the next episodes.